If someone had said to me 5 years ago that I would find myself in my sunroom nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee while sharing my story about my husband's driver with strangers online, I would have found it amusing. I chuckled and sighed, just like I did when my sister would ramble on about how life unfolds in surprising moments. But at this moment, I have gained a deeper understanding. I'm Marion, 62 years old, and I've been with Frank for so long that we've given up on counting anniversaries. Instead, we measure our time together by the vacations we've missed and the grandchildren we've welcomed into our lives. We find ourselves in a place of comfort, both financially and emotionally, as well as socially, perhaps a bit too at ease. Frank has consistently achieved success, perhaps to the point of being overly absorbed in his career. In retirement, he's traded boardrooms for golf courses, yet he remains absent from home often. That's when Malcolm entered the scene. The person behind the wheel, a pragmatic choice above all else. Following Frank's knee surgery 2 years back, it felt only natural to have someone ready to help. Malcolm has been with us as a driver for just over a year now. In my mid-40s, I find myself reserved, always careful not to overstep. He carries himself with a certain grace, respectful yet relaxed, embodying a timeless sense of honor. It's a rare sight these days, the kind that allows you to feel acknowledged without the sensation of being observed. Our exchanges never varied. He would swing open the car door, I would offer a courteous nod, and we would journey together in quietude or engage in light, polite conversation. Nothing extraordinary. It was that fateful afternoon, in late October. The air had a chill that crept into the sleeves of your sweater. I can still recall the moment as I emerged from the salon. It was one of those days when you feel slightly uplifted, a touch more youthful, all because someone took the time to care for your hair. The car was parked by the curb, and there was Malcolm, standing outside, leaning a bit with one hand tucked into his pocket. "Mrs. Wallace," he said, a warm smile spreading across his face as he swung the door open. I returned the smile. "Marion, please call me Marion. Every time someone addresses me as Mrs. Anything, I can't help but feel the weight of age settling in." He let out a gentle laugh and gave a knowing nod. "It is Marion. It was insignificant. Hold on a second." Yet, a change occurred, as if a veil had been gently moved by an unseen wind. Our conversations began to deepen after that moment. Not in a playful manner. I couldn't really say for sure. Only dialogues that carried significance. He sought answers concerning literature, concerning melodies, concerning the things Frank had long since set aside. And I discovered that I was responding, to be truthful, at times with an overwhelming sense of truthfulness. A few weeks later, as I returned from the market, exhaustion washed over me. A profound outburst that stems not from tiredness of the body, but from a deep sense of being overlooked and unrecognized. Malcolm likely observed, "Are you okay, Marion?" he inquired, his gaze fixed on the path ahead. I let out a deep breath, gazing through the window at the shimmering leaves cascading to the ground. "It was simply a lengthy day," he acknowledged with a nod. "You handle it gracefully." I gazed at him. What should I carry? He caught my eye in the rearview mirror, if only for a fleeting moment. All of it, that resonated deeply with me. It was more than just his words. It was the way he expressed it, as if he truly recognized me, as if he had been observing, not to criticize, but to comprehend. Following that moment, while circumstances remained largely the same, my awareness deepened. About myself, about him, of how uncommon it is to experience a sense of being truly understood. One afternoon, just a few weeks shy of Thanksgiving, Frank reached out to share that he would be heading out for a conference. It was yet another impulsive decision he rationalized with the promise of one final journey. I felt a sense of acceptance. I had grown accustomed to it, yet it hurt all the same. Malcolm arrived for our regular trip to the museum board meeting I participate in each month. I settled into the back seat and, without realizing it, let out a deeper sigh than I intended. "It was a tough day," he inquired. Before I could hold back, I blurted out that my husband was going to miss Thanksgiving. In that moment, I chuckled, attempting to find humor in the situation. "He promises to return just in time for dessert." Malcolm remained silent. He simply nodded, taking his time. "It's truly unfortunate to hear that." Festive times ought to focus on embracing the moment. That word resurfaced once more. Current moment. Silence enveloped us for the remainder of the journey, yet as I stepped out of the car, he offered me a small paper bag. Give this a shot, he suggested. I arrived last night. Delicious sweet potato pies, recipe passed down through generations. I opened my eyes wide. Malcolm, I can't handle this. Just a small piece, he interjected softly. Feel free to share your thoughts on it the next time we meet. The pie was truly exceptional. It was reminiscent of the innocence of youth, the warmth of familiarity, and the essence of belonging. The next morning, I couldn't shake the thought of that pie when I saw him again, this time arriving to take me to a fundraiser. I expressed to him that it surpassed any pie I had ever tasted, even my mother's. He offered a smile, yet remained silent. Yet he gazed at me, truly gazed at me. The car rides became a quiet space where unspoken thoughts found room. The silence often said more than conversation ever could. That night remains etched in my memory. It was the Tuesday just before Thanksgiving. A gentle rain caressed the windshield as we made our way home from the charity dinner. My heels dug into my feet, my earrings weighed me down, and I was acutely aware of each passing moment of my 62 years. Malcolm leaned over, activated the seat warmer, and remarked that he looked stunning this evening. It wasn't about his words. He spoke softly, as if his words were not intended to praise, but rather to confirm a truth he had long understood. I gazed at him. Thank you so much. As we drove into the driveway, the house's lights shimmered gently through the fog. I stayed right where I was. He looked directly at me. Is everything all right, Marion? I'm not sure, I replied. We lingered in the quiet moment. The gentle ticking of the engine filled the air, accompanied by the faint hoot of an owl echoing through the trees. He gently placed his hand over mine for a moment, a quiet gesture that offered comfort, awakening something I hadn't felt in a long time, simply being seen. A gentle warmth spread from my arm, filling my chest and reaching deep into a part of me I believed had fallen silent ages ago. It wasn't about a kiss or a sweeping score. It was simply that hand, that fleeting moment. It transformed everything. That night, sleep eluded me. It wasn't precisely guilt. It was something deeper than confusion. It felt as if my spirit had been softly stirred from a deep sleep, unsure of how to navigate this newfound awareness. Frank never reached out, though I didn't really anticipate that he would. He found himself in Chicago or Atlanta or one of those places he no longer takes the time to detail, merely names on his schedule devoid of narrative. Not recollections. The day dawned dreary with the grayness that penetrated deep within. As I drifted into the kitchen, wrapped in my robe, I filled my cup with coffee and paused by the window. Once more, the bird feeder stood bare. I told myself I would refill it, but deep down I understood that I wouldn't follow through. Not right now. Malcolm's hand resting on mine, it stayed in my thoughts like a lingering fragrance, subtle yet unmistakably there. I convinced myself it was insignificant. A soothing touch, compassion. This was the kind of moment that might have slipped by unnoticed had it not appeared precisely in the place where I felt the most isolated. Yet throughout the day, I found myself grinning for no apparent reason, and that frightened me somewhat. It wasn't until Friday that I crossed paths with Malcolm once more. I had the option to request a trip to the store or the library, or really anywhere that might spark a conversation, but I chose not to. I required the room to reflect, to allow the moment to unfold. As he showed up that afternoon to take me to the florist, a sense of calm enveloped the moment. Neither awkward nor strained, just careful, as if we were both treading lightly on unfamiliar terrain. Marion, he said warmly, stepping aside to let me in. Hey there, I said as I got in. Silence enveloped us in those initial moments. The gentle purr of the engine mingles with the soothing rhythm of raindrops dancing on the roof. At last he spoke up, expressing his concern. I hope I didn't overstep my bounds the other evening. His voice carried a calm, unwavering quality. I glanced in his direction. It wasn't you. He gave a single nod. Excellent. That was the moment. Keep it brief, no regrets. And I valued that beyond what words can convey. In all honesty, I had no desire for an explanation. I preferred it to remain untouched and unexamined. I simply longed for authenticity. I lingered at the florist, lost in thought longer than I intended. I traced my fingers along the rose petals and eucalyptus stems, as if I were in search of something deeper than just a decorative piece. As we returned to the car, Malcolm once more opened my door. Yet this time, his fingers grazed my wrist ever so gently. I became aware. He did as well. At that moment, I had the chance to speak up concerning Frank, about how everything felt so confusing. However, I inquired, "Do you have any relatives nearby?" He acknowledged with a nod. "My sibling. She educates young adolescents in middle school. And my mother, she's in Charleston. It's quite close." He beamed with warmth, just distant enough to justify reasons, just on the brink of exhausting them. I chuckled and it brought me joy. Truly excellent. We drove back in silence once more, yet it felt transformed this time, as if the quiet held a dialogue that we both shared. When we arrived at the house, I hesitated to open the door. I remained seated, my hands resting gently in my lap. "Malcolm," I spoke gently, "have you ever found yourself contemplating how your life could have unfolded if just one moment had taken a different turn?" He looked at me, the engine humming softly in the background. He mentioned it constantly. However, I believe those moments aren't necessarily about transforming everything. At times, they serve to awaken us to the things we've overlooked. That lingered in my mind long after he was gone. Thanksgiving passed by in a whirlwind of cranberry sauce and meticulously orchestrated discussions. Frank arrived late that morning, his golf bag draped over his shoulder as if it were a shield against his feelings. He pressed his lips to my cheek and inquired about the time for dinner. No regrets. In the midst of life's journey, a profound realization dawns, stirring deep emotions and reflections. This pivotal moment ignites a quest for meaning and self-discovery as one navigates the complexities of existence. The heart yearns for connection and understanding, leading to transformative experiences that reshape perspectives and awaken the spirit. It's a time of introspection where the past intertwines with hopes for the future, creating a tapestry of growth and renewal. We invited some friends and neighbors over. The grandchildren reached out, and the turkey turned out slightly overcooked. Frank dozed off on the couch, drifting into slumber during the football game. It was as if I were observing my own existence from a distance, peering in through a glass pane. The following day, I reached out to Malcolm. "I appreciate the offer, but I can manage on my own. I was just curious if you might be available to grab a coffee." A moment of stillness hung in the air. "I exist," he declared. We encountered each other at a serene spot near Willow Grounds, the type adorned with eclectic mugs and melodies reminiscent of my university years. As I entered, I found him already settled, a book held in one hand and a warm cup waiting for him on the table. "I wasn't sure if you'd show up," he remarked as I took my seat. I confessed that I hadn't either. Our conversation lasted almost 2 hours. It's a tale of melodies, but also of grief and strength, capturing the subtle transformations in life that occur when you're not paying attention. He truly listened, unlike many these days, not interrupting with his own thoughts or rushing to provide answers. Simply being present, it dawned on me, somewhere between the third sip and the second refill, that this was never really about Malcolm. The focus was on my journey. For countless years, I devoted myself to caring for everyone around me, my husband, my children, my garden, my schedule, that I lost touch with my own inner voice, with the essence of truly feeling alive. As we ventured outside, the sky was bright and clear, the pavement shimmered, and the air was filled with the scent of damp leaves and new beginnings. Malcolm accompanied me to my car. "I appreciate you taking the time to listen, for allowing this to unfold at its own pace." We shared a quiet look, full of understanding. He simply said, "Some things are worth patience, especially when they matter." I lingered in my car for what felt like an eternity after he departed, observing the wind dance playfully across the parking lot. A shift was occurring, not in a loud or shocking manner, but in the gentle recess of my heart that had remained still for far too long. And I was prepared to hear it once more. It's ironic that we inhabit the same space, bear the same surname, share a bed, and yet remain like two distant souls. Frank had been back for almost 2 weeks, and we navigated our space like pieces of furniture, existing side by side, practical and there, yet never really connecting. He would head out to the club before dawn, return in the late hours, and casually inquire if I'd noticed where he misplaced his cufflink. I would simply acknowledge with a nod or a gesture, and that would be all there was to it. There was no hostility between us, no raised voices, only a profound silence, and certainly not the easy kind. I began to immerse myself in the outdoors, taking walks along the path behind my home, inhaling the fresh December air, and observing squirrels darting playfully along the fence line. The winter's quiet mirrored the emotions swirling within me. One afternoon, I walked by the bench by the creek, the one Frank had put in place years ago, yet had never taken a moment to sit on. I swept away the frost with my gloved hand and settled down, wrapping myself in my coat like a protective shell. At that moment, my phone vibrated. A note from Malcolm. I hope the chill isn't too harsh on you today. As I passed the lake, memories of you flooded my mind. It seemed like a day filled with stillness. It was straightforward and reflective, bringing me a warmth that surpassed even the scarf I wore around my neck. I took my time before replying. I felt uncertain about how to proceed. I found myself fixated on that message, contemplating how something so seemingly trivial could carry such weight. That evening, Frank arrived home with a bottle of wine and shared that we had received an invitation to the Crawfords' party. It had been more than a year since I last laid eyes on the Crawfords. It would be lovely, he remarked. It could be beneficial for you to spend more time outside. I arched an eyebrow. It sounds as if you think I've been keeping myself out of sight. He appeared bewildered. I only wanted to express that you've appeared somewhat removed recently. I longed to find joy and laughter remote. I felt the urge to question him about his absence during our son's job loss, or during those 3 long nights when I found myself weeping silently in the bathroom, struggling to recognize the woman staring back at me in the mirror. However, I kept all of that to myself. I simply nodded, absolutely. Let's embark on this journey. The gathering was pleasant. The dish was excessively salty yet lacked proper seasoning. The casual conversation felt all too familiar. Grandchildren, joint surgeries, senior living communities in Arizona. I grinned so widely that my cheeks ached. And then I noticed Malcolm. He stood by the curb, a chauffeur patiently awaiting the arrival of a guest. It caught me by surprise. He never brought it up. Through the window, our gazes intertwined. He lowered his head just a bit, recognizing my presence, yet offered nothing further. My heart raced within me, a feeling that hovered between astonishment and an indescribable sensation. I made an excuse, slipped outside, feigning a phone call. He stood beside the car, his hands tucked into his coat pockets, gazing up at the night sky. As I drew near, I whispered gently, "It's a chilly evening." He glanced back, a soft smile gracing his lips. The cold evening felt oddly energizing. We stood there, quiet, yet understanding passed between us without needing words. "Tonight you radiate beauty," he remarked. A warm flush crept across my cheeks. "That's something you often mention." "That's simply the reality of it." I glanced at my heels, a sudden realization washing over me about how ridiculous they seemed in this authentic setting. At times it seems as though this is all just a dream. He moved in a bit nearer. He stepped a little closer, his words thoughtful. "I hope this is the kind of moment that stays with you." That moment lingered, elastic and sweet, unfolding with a gentle slowness that felt profoundly tender. Suddenly, a door swung open behind us, releasing a cascade of voices, shattering the enchantment. I took a moment to pause, readjusting my coat. "I ought to return," he agreed, yet his gaze remained. Upon re-entering, I discovered Frank engaged in a discussion about interest rates with someone I hardly recognized. He never inquired about my absence, nor did he seem to realize I was missing at all. Later that night, once we returned home, I found myself in front of the mirror, removing the meticulously crafted facade I had worn. Cosmetics, rouge, eyeliner. One after another, they disappeared, and when I lifted my gaze once more, I recognized myself. Only myself. Wrinkles, silver strands, the gentle sag of my jawline. Yet, it was something I hadn't encountered in ages. A glimmer of illumination in my gaze. Something vibrant. The following morning, I took a step I hadn't dared to take in ages. I poured my thoughts into my journal. I can't quite explain it, but it resonates deeply within me as a genuine feeling. And the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, deserves our attention. It had been a few days since I last heard from Malcolm. It was the holiday season, and he was likely preoccupied. Perhaps he was allowing me some room to breathe. I found myself thinking about him more often than I intended. Christmas morning arrived softly. Frank presented me with a tiny box containing a watch. Costly, graceful, detached. I expressed my gratitude to him. He acknowledged with a nod. He switched on the news. As the afternoon sun began to wane, I stepped into the garden. All around was a landscape of decay, yet the atmosphere buzzed with promise of what might have been. I reached out to Malcolm. I was just thinking about you, he said as he picked up the phone. We never set any plans. There's no necessity for that. Some bonds exist beyond the need for scheduled moments. They simply require room to exhale. Once more, sleep eluded me that night. Yet on this occasion, it wasn't a sense of unease. It was a revelation. The period between Christmas and New Year's seems to linger in a timeless state. A peculiar calm envelops the transition from one year to the next, as if the universe is pausing, anticipating a shift in the air. Seeing Malcolm again filled me with uncertainty about what was to come. I found myself thinking about him, perhaps more than was wise, yet I reassured myself that it was just a fleeting moment, a fleeting bond, a realization that addressed a void I hadn't recognized before. Yet life doesn't unfold in such a straightforward manner, does it? It's impossible to ignore the things that truly hold significance. They discover you. As the sun rose on the second morning of the new year, the phone began to ring. It was Malcolm. Marion, he murmured, his voice soft and uncertain. I have something important to share with you. My heart raced with unexpected intensity. I found myself uncertain about what I was preparing to face. I could see you're going, I remarked. I wished I could be mistaken, even though it wasn't a question. I hoped I was mistaken. A heavy silence lingered on the other end. He then declared, No, I won't be going anywhere. However, I believe it's important for you to hear this directly from me rather than from someone else. Go on, I murmured, feeling a chill sweep through my hands. Once more, I found myself by the window, gazing at the desolate garden, the silence of the outside world mirroring the unrest within me. I've been reflecting on our relationship, on the events of that evening, and I can no longer push it aside. My feelings for you, Marion, run deeper than they probably ought to. His words landed between us like heavy stones in calm water, creating ripples that disturbed everything I believed about myself. Who are we? I found myself at a loss for words, questioning whether I had the right to express anything in that moment. I had dedicated years to come into terms with my circumstances. In the stillness, the emptiness, the hushed moments that Frank and I had mastered in filling with emptiness. And now, what is this? I felt uncertain about whether I was prepared for it. Yet, I was prepared to hear, I feel the same way about you, I replied, my voice quivering slightly. Yet, I'm uncertain about how to handle that. What is the significance of this, Malcolm? What is the significance of any of this? The line fell into a deep stillness. His breath was audible, calm and measured. It signifies, he expressed, his tone comforting and confident, that I'm not the individual you've centered your existence upon. Yet, perhaps, just perhaps, I can assist you in rediscovering your true self. A gentle chuckle slipped from my lips, a mix of astonishment and comfort, a laugh that escapes when you finally exhale after a long moment of tension. I feel so lost, I admitted, my voice choked with emotion. You've been longing for a moment of realization, he said. I shut my eyes, allowing his words to envelop me. There wasn't a dramatic epiphany nor a swift instance of understanding. It's a gentle realization that often what we truly seek doesn't arrive with fanfare or extravagance. At times, these moments arrive softly as tender insights that guide us home to our true selves. After a long pause, he invited me to join him for coffee. I looked at the time. It was a Tuesday morning, filled with a sense of anticipation. In that moment, everything around me was quiet, and I experienced a sense of being truly alive for the first time in ages. I would appreciate that, I replied. The cafe where we first crossed paths was quaint, an aged structure with squeaky floorboards and an assortment of furniture, a spot that had stood the test of time longer than both of us combined. The aroma of cinnamon mingled with the rich scent of coffee grounds filled the air. I requested my regular black coffee with a hint of cream, but he presented me with a cup of something hot and zesty, slightly sweeter than I prefer, yet it brought a smile to my face regardless. Initially, our conversations were sparse. We simply remained there next to each other, allowing the quiet to envelop the gaps between us. In the end, I inquired, "What are our next steps?" He gazed at me, his demeanor gentle and reflective. We come to terms with it, whether side by side or on our own, but we cease the charade of ignoring our emotions. We cease the facade of being self-sufficient. It was a subtle revelation, one that required nothing from me, merely the acknowledgement that a change had occurred. "I'm not sure if I'm prepared for what's next," I confessed, my voice just a soft murmur. For countless years, I've told myself that I don't desire anything beyond what I have, that I'm okay as I am. With a soft smile, he extended his hand across the table, covering mine with warmth. "You're doing well, Maria, but perhaps it's time for a change, something deeper." I remained silent. I was not obligated to. His touch held all the significance. It embraced me deeply, gentle, unwavering, confident. We lingered there for what felt like an eternity, until the early morning bustle faded away and the light streaming through the windows transformed from a dull gray to a warm, inviting gold. As we prepared to part ways, he embraced me. It wasn't a goodbye hug, but one of reassurance. "Take care of yourself, Marion," he said gently, his presence offering quiet comfort. "I will," I softly murmured. The journey home carried a new weight. Everything around me, the car, the streets, the house, seemed transformed, as if the universe had subtly realigned itself. Frank was there when I entered the house. He glanced away from his reading and gave his familiar grin. "How did your day go?" "It was fine," I replied, my voice unwavering, yet an unspoken feeling hung in the air. He said it again, almost as if he were trying to feel the weight of the words. He returned to his reading, pretending that nothing had changed. Uncertainty loomed over my future. I was uncertain about the futures of Malcolm, myself, and Frank. For the first time in many years, I found myself unafraid of what lay ahead. I could sense the hidden possibilities in the pauses of time. The realization of my true self pressed heavily on me, revealing the secrets I had kept and the unexpected twists life could offer when I opened myself up to them. And that was sufficient.